Thank you, Brian. I'm very happy to be here at WordSesh. And I'm also very excited to talk about something that has been a new passion of mine, is WordPress configuration and how we can actually automate it. So WordPress configuration is fun. I love it. But those really are two phrases that really aren't heard often. Why is that? Well, if you work across multiple development environments, even just from your local machine to a production URL, you have to redo everything every single time. You need to activate your plugins, you need to configure your facets if you use facet WP, or any of your other plugin settings. You need to do that over and over and over, and it only gets worse if you have development, staging, and live. So it just takes so much time. It's all that precious time that we use for development or QA. And of course, we're human, at least the last time I checked, and there's always going to be human error. How many times have we forgotten to activate a plugin such as ATF, Advanced Custom Fields? And then we go to check out our theme, and all we see is PHP errors rather than the actual theme. That's not fun, and I imagine we're like this gentleman on the screen who is flipping the table in anger. But what if I told you there is a better way and there is a solution to our problems with configuration and having to redo it? This is where the beauty of WP CFM comes in. Configuration management for WordPress. Believe me, when I was first introduced to this, my mind was blown and I was beyond the moon excited. Actually, I still am to this day every time that I get to put this in a new build at work. So, what can WP-CFM do for you? Well, firstly, it can copy your database settings to the file system. So this way, if you just want certain settings, you don't need to worry about copying your database every single time, which again is never ideal because you don't have to worry about doing a search replace for a different environment, or you may have certain content that you only want to show on your staging or on your local rather than production. That helps with that. It's also very similar to Drupal's features module. So if you come from a Drupal background, this will probably be a little bit familiar to you. The great thing is, if you have anything saved in the WP_options table, no problem. You can bring that over. And the most exciting part, at least to me, as somebody who has just started to get more familiar with the command line, is that there's WP CLI support. You can push and you can pull all your settings based on what you named your bundles. So, how does this all work? Well, firstly, you'll create a bundle, which is known as a group of settings. There's two main terminologies that you need to know. There's push, which is where you'll export your database settings to the file system. Or there's pull, when you're going to import the file system settings into the database. And the great thing about all this, it uses JSON. So you don't have to worry about coding everything. It comes in a nice formatted JSON file. So let's just go over how to do this basically. So as you can see, right now we're just on a basic WordPress install that I've set up locally, and we're on the WP CFM settings. If you want to add a bundle, you'll just click Add Bundle, and you can name it. And you can see by default, you can select all the WP options, or if you want to do something, you want to just do blog name. If you want to copy over the admin email. So let's just say we want to copy over those two. We'll have a blog name, admin email, and we can name it whatever we wish. So let's call this configuration of blog. You'll hit Save Changes, and your settings are saved. to push, so say we want this to go out to another one. We'll just hit push. It'll say push successful. And in a moment, I'll show you exactly how this shows. And then say you're pulling something in, you're downloading something. You'll just hit pull. It'll say import file settings to database. You'll hit OK, and it'll say pull is successful. And now, if you want to look in here, you can see I have my setup of my files. You can see we have two JSON files here. We have our active plugins, and we have our new one, which is called configuration of blog. So it'll take what you named, your bundle, it'll convert it to lowercase, and it'll add underscores where there were spaces. Cool. So that's just your very basic settings. But let's go to infinity and beyond, to quote Buzz Lightyear. Let's just look at extending this beyond the out-of-the-box settings. The great thing about this is if you are a PHP developer, there are hooks and filters that can extend it. We're just going to cover a few. So one thing to keep in mind, that if you're doing this, you're going to have to create a must-use plugin. You can't just stick this in your theme. You can't just create a plugin that could be activated or deactivated. The way this works is that it has to be configured in a must-use plugin. So the main one is called WPCF1 underscore configuration underscore items. So this one allows you to go beyond the user interface, and you can see how to configure additional items. On the screen right now is just a little bit of a code snippet as to how to do it. There's also other ones. There's, you can disable the multi-environment. So by default, WPCFM comes with dev, test, and live, but you may be in a situation where you only have one of these and you only want to keep it. So if you want to disable it, you're simply going to return an empty array by adding the filter WPCFM underscore multi underscore env. You can also change the configuration directory. So say you're on shared host name and you have limitations there as to which directories are writable. Pantheon, for instance, you can only write to certain directories. That's not a problem. You can change where your configuration directory is. Also, similarly, you can change what your configuration directory URL is. So that's just some basic settings how to do it. Now, let's talk into how it really goes into automation and using Pantheon Quicksilver as an example. So how is this set up? Well, Pantheon has these really handy hooks that can tie into your Pantheon YAML file, and you can set this up. We'll go into this in a bit. But you can extend Quicksilver far beyond WPCFM. But again, we're not going to get into that today, and that's a whole different talk. So let's get into it a bit. So on my screen, you can see that I have my Pantheon.yaml file. You can see that I have the Quicksilver platform integration hooks, and there are multiple ones that you can tie this into. You could have it when you sync your code on Pantheon. You can have it when you deploy. So this is if you're going in your main environments from dev to test to live. And you can also have it when you create multi-devs, if that's something you have available on your plan. You can see that I have it in this particular folder, private scripts WPCFM pool. And that's this file right here. So you can see that it activates it. WP plugin activate. There's a whole bunch of good stuff here. At the end, which is really important, it clears the caches, and then you are done. So let's get into an example of how exactly this works. So right now, you can see on my local, I have no plugins activated. We're going to reactivate WP-CFM. You can see right now on my PR, there are no plugins activated either. So for fun, let's just activate Advanced Custom Fields Pro, SVG support. We'll activate, and that's done. We're going to go back to settings, WP-CFM. We are going to push our active plugins. We're going to go back to our command line. We're going to do git status. You'll see that we have a bunch of things configured. So let's just add this active plugins one for now. We are going to commit it. And I'm going to push to my Pantheon origin remote. You'll see now that it's pushed. If we go back to our Pantheon dashboard, you'll see that my code is syncing. You'll see that the workflow is done. We will refresh. We'll first activate WP-CFM. We will pull the settings. Go back to plugins, and you'll see that Advanced Custom Fields, SVG support, and WP-CFM are installed or activated. While the examples we are showing today are in Pantheon, theoretically, you can automate this to use any CI or CD tool, so long as you can access your Git post-deploy hooks, or if you can SSH into the server and run a WP CLI command after you sync your code. The possibilities are endless. And actually, I'm still exploring a couple myself for other hosting providers, such as WP Engine or Kinsta, or even self-hosting. So if we're looking ahead and we're summarizing, you need to remember that this is not 100% automatic. You're still going to need to trigger the push of your settings when you are trying to deploy it. And sometimes, as you saw, you still need to manually do the pull, but it's all saved in those JSON files. There's also additional settings that need configuration. So while out of the box, you can push your active plugins or anything from WP_options, things such as Facet WP or Search WP might need additional configurations, and that is what the hooks and filters we covered earlier are for. And most importantly, this is open source. It's ever changing. While this is the state of WP-CFM right now, it's only going to grow, and you'll be able to do much more in the future. So here are a few resources of items we covered today. There's the link to the plugin, there's a link to Pantheon Quicksilver, and there's a link to the different hooks that you are able to use with WP-CFM. And that's about it. Again, we only touched on a small subset of what this powerful yet essential plugin can do. I'm still continuing to explore its reach, and I really encourage you to do so as well. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. My contact info is on the screen. So thank you again for attending this talk today. And thank you, Brian, again for producing WordSesh. This is a wonderful conference and a wonderful opportunity for developers to learn from each other.